Hello, everyone. Once again, this is Joel Monteliski, and I want to thank you for being on these online TestConf sessions.
Hi, Joel.
Hey, Matt, how are you? Chris, are you with us as well?
I am. How are you?
Wow, guys, this is a 2-on-1, so I apologize up front. Now, not kidding. I want to introduce the next two speakers, and we obviously have great speakers on today, and if you've listened, everyone actually has their own points. And Matt and Chris are no exceptions, unless you have been living under a rock. I guess that you have heard of them. But again, just a small intro, not to be unpolite. Let's start with Matt, actually. Matt is the managing director of Excelon Software. He is the lead author of Save Our Scrum, and he's also the recipient of the 2014 Most Influential Agile Tester Professional Award. On top of all that, the thing that I actually like more about Matt lately is his work lately is actually his work on the Testing Show podcast that I think it's incredibly amazing podcast. And I mentioned Alan Page podcast. This is the other one that I listen on a regular basis. So Matt, hi.
Hello. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay, don't worry.
Try to let the presenter get all the audio.
Yeah, a presenter needs to have audio on,
Thanks
but
for having me.
we'll work on that as well. The second part of this session, the second presenter is actually he was mentioned by Alan Page earlier, and if you paid attention, he actually showed a couple of resources that Chris is going to be talking about, because Matt actually showed a couple of links to the resources you have on GitHub, and he mentioned all of that. So Chris Kentz is the test engineer for Laurel and Wolf, if I mentioned correctly. He's a BBST instructor for the Association of Software Testing. And he's also a scuba instructor, even though I'm not sure how that actually fits into the mix, but I'll be happy to listen to that. And the session that Chris and Matt are going to be doing today is contributing to GitHub is for everyone. That I personally think that it's actually a great session. For me personally, it was something that actually opened my mind or opened my eyes to that. So I really appreciate it. And guys, you know what? Take it from me. I'm sure that you will do a better job than I will explaining that topic. So there you go.
Thank you.
Great. So we'll get started. So what we want to do today, you've probably heard people talking about GitHub, version control systems. You may be a technical tester, you might not. If you're already using GitHub, you probably don't need to watch this. But if you haven't used Git before, today we're going to provide you everything you need to know to run through and install and use GitHub personally. So we're going to start with a demo of how to use it. Don't let that overwhelm you. We want to get that nailed and locked in so you can rewatch it again. It'll be recorded. And then if we have time left over, we'll go into how and why and what in configuration management and demystify it, because this is probably going to be an iterative process for you. So what we recommend, watch the video. We're going to demo how to use GitHub. It's probably going to be overwhelming. We're going to go pretty fast. Then we'll keep talking about how to use it. We'll get the slides up afterward. And after it's recorded, watch it again and then try to follow along, creating your own account. And the good news is if we get stuck, we have Slack and a couple other different places we can talk to bring you up to speed, to add this technical skill to your toolkit today. You ready to get started?
All right. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so let me go ahead. I'm going to share my desktop here so that we can do this demo. And so the great thing about me doing the demo is that I already have all the prerequisites installed. And so like Matt said, we don't have a whole lot of time, so this may go kind of fast, but that's okay. Our slides are pretty good, pretty well put together. They're going to have a lot of the information that you're going to need, but I like to show, and I did share my desktop, right? Now I shared my desktop. There we go. And so I've got all the prerequisites installed. Just go ahead and follow along. I've already got Git installed. I've already set up my GitHub account. I've got a text editor installed because we're going to use that. And so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go through what I like to call your basic workflow. So it's going to be real simple. We're going to go to GitHub. We're going to create a repository through the interface. Typically, we're not fans of just reading from our slides, but like I said, I think this is, our slides are pretty good. They're pretty well put together step by step. And so I'll be reading off of those as we go through this demo. And so we're going to go to GitHub. We're going to create a repository through the web interface. We're going to name it. We're going to give it a README file. And then we're going to go ahead and download our code locally so that we can make some edits to it. So let's go ahead and do that. I've already created my account. And so this is what it looks like when you're on github.com after you already have an account created. And so what we're going to do is we're going to click New Repository. Let's go ahead and create a new one. And so then we're going to give it a name. This is all pretty easy, pretty straightforward. When you come up with a name, by all means, come up with something creative. My first repo, GitHub for everyone. I'm going to choose the randomly generated one because they're sort of funny. You can provide a description if you want. We're going to keep this as a public repository because those are the free ones. And then we're going to initialize this with a README file. So this is actually going to create our first file within our repository. And we'll just go ahead and create that. And voila, pretty simple, right? So we've now created a GitHub repository. But now what we want to do is we want to take this repository and we want to pull this down locally. So we're going to click this green button and we're just going to copy the repository URL. And if we go back to our slides, we're at number 3, we're downloading the code. We copied the URL of the repo. And now what we're going to do is go to a command line and type git clone and the name of the repo. And so this is my terminal. Like I said, I've already got this configured the way I like it. I've already got Git installed locally. So this is going to work for me just by typing git clone and then pasting the URL for the repository. It's apparently called Effective Goggles. So excellent. I've now got this stored locally. And if we go to the next slide, we're going to see that the next thing we want to do is make an edit to this repository. So I'm going to browse to the folder in the command line, and then I'm going to open my text editor and edit my README file. So let's do that. I'm going to CD into Effective Goggles. Excellent. One of the things I do want to mention is that because this is my own local terminal, I've got some special configurations here, and I just want to highlight them. So one, you're going to see the name of my repository. The second thing you're going to see is that this recognizes that it is a Git repository. So it's initialized as a Git repository, and that we're on the master branch. Now, this sort of simple workflow, we're not going to talk about branching. Everything we're doing is on this master branch. So just keep that in mind. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to open a text editor so we can edit our files. I like to use Atom. Atom is really great because I can type Atom space period and press enter. And when I do that, Atom opens up and there's my repository. Pretty cool. So I'm going to go to the README file and we're going to make some edits to this. I'm going to remove some text. And I actually have a poem that I like, Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy that and paste that in. When I paste that in, I want to remember to save this file. That's very, very important. And now it's saved. So I've made my edits. I've made my edits locally. It's looking good, and I think I'm ready. I'm pretty much done here. So what I want to do now is confirm our changes and commit them. So if I go back to the terminal here, the way that I confirm my changes is I just go git status, and Git will just basically tell us, hey, this is what's going on currently. And it says, by the way, none of your changes are staged for commit. And so let's go ahead and add those changes to be committed. To do that, we type git add, and we can either type the name of the file like README, or in this case, we're just going to type git add space period, which is go ahead and add everything into this repository to Git. And there we go. If I type git status again, it's going to say, hey, your changes are ready to be committed. Now we just need to commit them. So we go to the next line of our slides and it says to do that, we just type git commit -m and then we provide a description of our changes. Let's call this added a poem, and then we'll hit enter. And now our changes, including there's some stats here, have said, listen, by the way, everything has now been committed and is under source control locally. Fantastic. But that's just one part of what we want to do. So we've made changes, we've committed those changes to Git, but now we actually want to take those changes and put them to GitHub. So what we want to do is we want to push our local changes to GitHub, and we do that by typing git push origin and the name of our branch. So git push origin, and in this case, the name of our branch is master. So hit enter. This will take anywhere from a few seconds to a few minutes, just depending on how big the changes are, how many changes there were. You can see it didn't take very long for ours because we don't have that many. So if I go back to GitHub now, this is where we left off. I'm going to refresh and look at that. So there are our local changes now published to GitHub. So this is great. We just went through, we downloaded this, we created this repo, we downloaded it, and we made this little edit and published it. Pretty straightforward. But this sort of basic workflow isn't all that realistic. It's fine if you're doing this, if you have this repository and you're the only one using it, but chances are in the real world, you won't be the only one using this repository. There'll be many, many people. And in cases where lots of people are making lots of changes to a branch, you're going to want to use branching. And branching just basically says for each set of changes that we want to make, let's create a new branch, make those changes in that branch, and then we can worry about merging them into our master branch later. For many companies and for many projects, the master branch is actually your quote unquote production branch. And so in order to make sure we're not just pushing whatever changes we want to production, we should be making our changes in a separate branch and then later merging those in. So let's go ahead and show you how to do that. So it turns out when I was copying Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll, I actually missed this first line. I can't believe I did that. But the good news is we can fix that bug and we can do it using branching. If we go back to our slides, we create a new branch by typing git checkout-b and the branch name. So if I go to terminal here, I'll type git checkout-b, and then what should we call this? Let's call it fix poem bug. Hit enter. And so now if you look at my terminal, we have switched from the master branch to the fix poem branch. Excellent. So now we're just going to do the same workflow that we did before. We're going to make an edit, we're going to confirm and then commit our changes and then push those changes. If I go to Adam has already updated. It says, oh, I'm now in this fix poem bug branch. Great. I'm going to recopy this. Let's paste the changes. Make my changes, Jabberwocky, awesome. Add some styling here. And just like before, I'm going to save the changes. And now I'm going to go to terminal and repeat the same things I did. So git status, let's see what we need to do. It says these changes are not staged. So let's type git add space period. This will add all the changes to Git. Excellent. Git status again to see what we're doing now. It says your changes are ready to be committed. So we'll type git commit -m fixed poem, hit enter. And again, we now have some stats on what our changes were, and our changes have been stored here locally in this branch. So let's go ahead and push those changes up to GitHub. Remember, the way we do that is to say git push origin and the name of our branch. Before it was master, now it is fix poem bug because we are in the fix poem bug branch. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And again, this will take a little bit of time just depending on how many changes there were. Oh, good, looks like we're done. So now if I go back to GitHub, oh, let's go back to our slides. So we created a branch and we followed the same workflow as before. So now what we want to do is when we go to GitHub, our changes are going to be in a separate branch. It's not going to be in the master branch. It's going to be in this fix poem bug branch. So the way that we set it up so we can eventually merge those changes in, get those changes into quote unquote production, is we're going to create a pull request. And we're going to set one area of the pull request, the base branch, to master, and then we're going to set the next to our fix poem bug. We're going to add some text to the pull request and we'll create it. Once it's been created, we can merge it in and our changes will be in production. So let's go ahead and go to GitHub. GitHub's pretty cool. It says right away, it detects that, hey, you have recently pushed changes in this fix poem bug branch. Would you like to compare and create a pull request? And yes, we do. And so we can see that in this pull request, I'll go ahead and show you the full screen here. We have the base branch as master, so that is our quote unquote production branch. Here is our bug fix branch, fix poem bug. You'll see that the commit message that I used is now the title of the pull request. I can add some commits, some comments here. Let's get this merged. And I can also assign this to somebody. So in a company or in a repository where you had lots of committers, you would probably assign this to somebody and let them review it and commit the changes. This is kind of cool. If we scroll down a little bit, we can actually see a difference between here's master and here's our branch. And so we can sort of see here are the additional changes that we're making with this.
Hey, while we've got you here,
yep.
Can you go back down for a second?
Sure.
What's the deal with stood a while and thought?
Yeah, it looks like in this case,
you took a character away accidentally?
Yeah, I don't think I did, but I think GitHub, maybe copying and pasting did. So this is interesting. Thanks for pointing that out, Matt. So what this is saying on the left here is the red line is showing that we deleted something and the green line is showing that we added. And it makes sense because we added this up here when I copied and pasted. And it looks like down here, what seems to have been removed was a space after the period here. And so this is one of the big benefits of being able to see the differences within a pull request. And we can see this later after I create it, but you can actually see we're removing line 15 and replacing it with line 20 over here. It's a great way to sort of get a snapshot of what changes you have. So I'm going to go ahead. This looks good to me, so I'm going to go ahead and create this pull request. And now the pull request is created. So if Matt was in this branch or on this this repository, I could assign it to him, and he could come over here and go look at the files changed and go, oh, look at this. Yep, that looks like the full change, and then he could merge it in. And so merging it in, I'm going to flip back over to the code section here, and now you're going to see here is the full poem. And so this is a more normal type of branching and commit process. So we submitted the pull request, and once it's merged, it goes into production. That is the sort of more normal workflow that you can expect when working with a development team, when contributing to a project on GitHub. It's all sort of the same thing. You're just creating different branches for your different changes. Now, there's one other thing that I'd like to point out. We've covered everything so far, and I know this has been quick, but we've covered everything that you're going to need to do to commit to GitHub. You're going to find a repository, you're going to download the repository, you're going to make some changes, you're going to check out those changes in a branch, save your changes, commit those changes, and then push those changes to GitHub. So let's say you find a project that you really want to commit to. And there's just one more thing that you're going to want to do prior to actually making those changes. And that is you're going to want to fork a branch. And so forking, if we look at our repository, you can see that forking is right up here. And so just by clicking this button, what this does is it basically says, hey, I like this branch. Let's go ahead and pull it into our account. And once you pull it into your account, then you can go ahead and follow that same workflow as before. And so that is the end of the demo. So I'll go ahead and switch it back to Matt.
Yeah, and now we're back to the original presentation we planned before we realized we only had 45 minutes. So we're going to go through this and see how much we can get done. We really wanted you to see that demo and kind of experience the workflow. And then, of course, you can come back to it. The videos are going to be recorded. You can play it back. You can pause it, and you can actually work through and create your own account. So configuration management, that's a big, fuzzy, strange word. How's that different than version control? The concept of configuration management, I was taught in software engineering class, really emerged from some lessons learned during the Second World War. Some people may be aware, in the North African campaign led by General Erwin Rommel, the Germans had an amazing start, and then they slowly fell apart. And there's some reasons why. The oil supply was bad, but a big one was that they practiced continuous improvement on the assembly line in Germany where they were making these tanks, and they had pretty good supply lines. So when your Panzer breaks down in North Africa because it's hot and it's dry and it's dust everywhere because it's a desert, then you ask for a part and it goes back to Germany and goes on a ship and comes back and get it reasonably fast. But your new belt wouldn't fit because they changed the size of the belts. So you have to abandon the whole tank because you couldn't get a replacement part. And we fixed that with the American automotive industry with this idea of model year cars, the 2013 Dodge Grand Caravan, the 2015 Dodge Dart, whatever it is. We fixed that. So now you can align. These are all the things that go together at this point and time. And that's what configuration management does. So when things go under configuration management, you can say, what are the differences from here to there? What changed? Who changed it? I want to go back. Now, in a previous century, when I started my career, the technology of choice was something like Visual Source Safe, where you'd have what's called the checkout model, right? So we see here that sother.htm is checked out by Stephen J. And that means only Stephen J can use it. And that was to protect from multiple people touching the file at the same time, because merging was, we didn't have merging really solved as a problem. Certainly not well, it was a pain. You'd have to go through manually and pick changes, and you wouldn't remember which happened first. So just check it out. It's like a library. When the book is checked out, nobody else can touch it. When you check it back in, then people can. In the last 10 years, we've had some really fantastic merge tools come, so we can kind of tell which is newer, and it mostly works most of the time. So anybody can edit a file, and then you push it. And if there's no conflicts, it'll go in. If I'm trying to send something up after someone has made a change, they're tools to deal with the merge now. The basic workflow, which Chris already expressed, was git add, git commit, git push. So why GitHub? So Git is, so the history of the open source tools was CVS, then Subversion, and then Git. Git is the best for dealing with ASCII text code in particular. But you could put anything in GitHub, which we'll talk about later. You can put configuration files and data and all kinds of things in GitHub. But in Git, GitHub is a commercial company that hosts, because you still need a server, that hosts code. You can get a free account, and you can use it for your personal profile. And it's because it's open source projects are open source anyway. Anybody that creates a free account, everybody can see all the things that you've done, which is fine for open source and it's fine for a portfolio project. It also demonstrates that you are able to use this workflow, you understand this workflow. When developers talk about these terms like branching, merging, committing, pushing, you'll be able to stay in the conversation, which allows you to just get a couple of more inches closer to the dev. We picked GitHub because it's everything for you. It just works. It's a server, it's free. You want to create a portfolio anyway, right?
And so GitHub is also, in a sense, now has become your public portfolio. Has, especially with public repositories, which are, of course, the free ones, it has become a way to sort of showcase what you have done, and especially to other people, whether that be practicing like the Selenium, if you're learning how to use Selenium or practicing how to use Selenium, maybe you have committed some Selenium tests to repositories, maybe you've created some other projects or tools or a blog or whatever it is. And so GitHub has sort of become this sort of new way to show your public works. But GitHub is useful for more than just code. And so everything that we talked about so far and understanding the Git and GitHub workflow, it's really great, but there's a lot of things that you can do outside of just code. One of the big examples is running a website. So with GitHub, they'll actually host websites for free for you. And those websites can be as simple as to the lower left here, you can see this Hey There, I'm Connor website, which is just like referring people to all the places they are on the web. You can run a full blog on GitHub as well. I have a website called testingconferences.org, which is an open source list of workshops and conferences, and that's hosted on GitHub. So that's a really great idea, a really great place to start. If you find a website that is hosted on GitHub, you can do that thing called forking, which we briefly mentioned, and literally copy their website, edit it, and publish it as your own. It's pretty fantastic. You can also write documentation and, for that matter, publish books on using GitHub. There's third-party tools that are built into GitHub. One of them for writing books and documentation is called Gitbook. And so here are a few examples on the slide of books and documentation that have been published using GitHub. You can create lists, and lists are really great. These are some of probably the more popular aspects of things on GitHub that are not code. I have one, so there's one called, a really popular one called this big list of naughty strings, which is literally, just as it sounds, a list of strings that you can use while testing that could potentially cause issues for.
Just to stop you for a second, Alan
Sure.
actually showed this one.
Did he?
A little bit earlier on, yes, and he said that it's a great list to actually use and share.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, I missed his, but I heard he had some references that correspond to ours. But so lists, checklists, data. I've created a catalog of images that I use for testing that are based on sizes. And there's so many great types of lists that you can imagine, lists on platforms and tools and automation frameworks. One of the other things you can do is also make notes. And I've actually been a fan of writing exploratory charters using GitHub. I've written a little bit about this, but suffice it to say, you can put plain text notes and version control those, and then put those into GitHub. And you can either, for specifically exploratory charters, you can write these in GitHub, but you can also put these in GitHub issues. And if I'm not sure how much time we have, but if we have a little bit of time, I can show you how to do that using GitHub issues. So one of the things that you're going to
We have about
thanks, Joel.
5 to 10 more minutes, depending on how you want to play it.
Okay, good to know. So one of the things that you're going to come away with after you've figured out how to practice and use GitHub and Git is, okay, great, what should I add to Git or GitHub? And so here are a couple examples. We've already gone through a few of them so far. One of the things that I use my repos for are configuration files. If you don't want to host a website on Git, but maybe you have a WordPress blog, you can back up those files on GitHub. And we've talked a little bit about the documents, the lists, the documentation that you can put on there, the notes. Since we do, thank you, Joel, have 5 or so minutes, I'll go ahead and show you. If we go back to the repository that we created, it's called Effective Goggles. You're going to see that there, and Matt sort of briefly mentioned this, but there is an Issues tab. GitHub is a full-blown bug tracking system for each of your repositories. So you can actually go in and use this issues tracker for any number of things. You can use it for bugs, you can use it for to-do lists, and you can also use it for, as we sort of briefly mentioned, writing exploratory charters. And so you can write things, and so just to sort of point out on our slides, GitHub Issues is a fully featured bug tracker. Titles, summaries, you can assign issues, you can add labels, and this comes with each repository that you create. These are open source, these are open to the public, but you can write whatever you would like and store them as issues. So for example, if you wanted to practice writing exploratory charters, explore Kents.com charter. You'd probably want to come up with a better title than that. I'm pressed for time, so I'm not thinking about that. But then you could also follow the Elizabeth Hendrickson's format. So that's explore Kents.com with, let's call, what type of exploratory charter would we want to do? For example, with performance monitoring tools to find any performance bottlenecks. Let's correct that. And so you can use GitHub Issues here as an actual system for adding exploratory charters, issues, whatever it may be. It's a very, very handy tool. And so once you sort of figure out what you want to do for your own repositories, then you'll start to naturally think about what projects should I contribute to, what other people's projects should I contribute to. The best way to start is just to find things that you're interested in, projects, tools, lists, whatever it is. I'm going to plug testingconferences.org again because it's mine and because it's awesome. But that's really just a list of conferences and workshops. And so if you go to testingconferences.org and you see it's out of date, feel free to help us make it up to date. If you use WordPress, you can download WordPress.com desktop app and you can actually file issues. They would love it if you could file bug reports for them. If you want to commit code, Babel, Node, NPM, Rails, they all have labels within GitHub Issues to help you to tag things if you're first-time committers, and they'll actually help you out a lot more than if you were just a regular project member. And in our notes, we also have a lot more reference information. If you want to practice Selenium, we have examples on how to do that as well. So Joel, I think we're done. Matt, did you want to say anything?
Just that's all, folks, for this presentation. We hope you come watch again and actually follow through. You may get stuck as you're trying to follow through. So 3 places you can go. Chris is asking anything. I just did a blog post on this. I'm happy to talk about stuff there. I'll put links in there. Or the Slack, which I think is a fantastic, great way to get people on. I need to get on that real soon. Thanks.
Excellent, guys. Chris, anything else that you forgot to add? Not that we have a lot of time, but we still have a little bit of it.
I think I've covered most everything.
Okay. Now, there's a question here that, Chris, I think that you talked a little bit about it. I'm not sure that you meant by that, but there's a question here. If you have any favorite diffing tools for code changes locally before syncing with GitHub, any pointers of that?
Yeah, so there are a couple of tools you can use. I think GitHub Desktop So GitHub actually makes a desktop app that is useful for diff tools. There are a number of Git related tools that are used for tracking, branching, and that sort of thing that provide good tools for seeing diffs.
Okay. Matt, you have a question here from the Way Past machine. Didn't VSS support non-exclusive locking when checking out a file once it was added to a server component, that is? Feel free not to answer that.
I'm sure at some point it did. I'm sure that if you look hard enough, you could find people that used it. I'm sure that the merge tools weren't very good. So yeah, you could do it. I'm sure people did.
Okay. Guys, I have a personal question here. And even though my company uses GitHub extensively, I do feel that it's a little bit kind of overwhelming. And again, being something that I haven't done, I would like to start by, first of all, looking into the lists and maybe even non-technical stuff like you were saying, all those lists that you mentioned before, Chris. Where can is there such a thing as a list of GitHub projects for non-technical people?
So I created, and I think Alan mentioned this, I created a blog post, and I think my screen is still sharing, so I think I can show this.
Yes, you are.
But so I created a blog post just of 9 lists that I found interesting for testing. This blog post is a little bit self-serving because some of my repositories are here.
We'll forgive you for that one.
Thank you. But there are some with input fields there's some good security lists as well. There's some good stuff on just automation and free software testing books. And so these are really good ones that really good for starting out. So if you didn't actually want to create your own repository, but you just wanted to sign up for GitHub and find something interesting, these are really good to find, and you can star them, like you can like them, and then come back to them whenever you want. So these are really good, and I can post this in Slack.
Okay. Thanks for posting that. I already saw it. There's a question here actually in Slack, and I'm using it because a lot of people are actually asking there. It says, as for Git and GitHub, it is my experience that a lot of companies overcomplicate the Git experience. That is, they intensify, they make things complicated by applications that are not segmented well enough and are very monolithic. Would you agree that's an issue in our industry right now?
I think that really just depends on the individual companies. Some companies make it a lot more complex than it needs to be. And there's also, so I mentioned previously the GitHub desktop app. My programmers, my software developers use that all the time, even though there's some in the industry that would say don't use a GUI when using Git. But it's fantastic and it's easy to use and it makes things less complicated. And I think for anybody starting out or trying to do this, do things that are not complicated. Start with very, very simple things and then work towards some more complicated things. Hopefully that's not the case with your company, but start simple and work your way to the more complex.
I think that's important advice, because when you get into these, it's very easy to get into, well, first you need to install the right package installer, and then you need to use Vim, or no, you shouldn't be using Vim, you should be using Emacs. And it's like, just trying to create a text file. I just want to get started. Like, no, it's okay. Use whatever text editor you're good with, right? Use things that you know. Learn the bare minimum of command line things. If it's just you and nobody else there, you can push to master. No one's going to arrest you. And you can learn a little bit at a time, and it's okay. There is kind of technical snobbery gets us in trouble because it creates artificial barriers to learning. Don't let that stop you.
Exactly. Just like Matt said, and that's why our demo started with the simplest, most basic workflow, because that's the one you're going to practice with, and it's going to be the easiest for you. Don't worry about branching, just get used to doing things in Git. And then later on, as you start to understand it more, then you can get into branching, but start easy. Are we good, Joel?
I've never packed that much into 45 minutes, I think, ever.
Well,
It was
actually,
comprehensible.
I was actually muted, but sorry for that. I wanted to thank you because even on a personal level, I think that I'm going to actually get and create my own account and do it, something that I haven't done up to now, and start from the non-technical aspects of it. It looks a lot less frightening than it did 45 minutes ago. And I think that you actually did a great job. Guys, people are really asking for the videos and for the sharing, so we will go over on that. And again, I think that the conversation will continue over on Slack because people do have a lot of comments and questions to go over that. So I really want to thank you for this session, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Now, just to remind everyone, remember, we have the links on Slack to give Chris and Matt feedback on their sessions and to give everyone else. We have one more session to go today by Adisa Sinonovic and Amela Tefterderijas. Sorry for mispronouncing those names. I know I'm going to get it. But we'll be right back in about 15 minutes. Remember, send us your pictures and get some coffee for this last stretch. And we'll be right back. Thanks.